Okay. So let me have another try at doing the right presentation, not the wrong one, which generally helps in these things. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Right. Can you just confirm you can see the screen all right?
Yes.
Yeah, perfectly. All right. What I want to do this morning is just talk a little bit around legal structures. I'm happy to take questions as you go along, and if I can't answer them, I'll always come back to you with an answer. What I will say from the outset, there's no right or wrong answer in any of this, and so let's take it as it goes. And if you want to ask something, please do ask. So I'm going to start off with business planning, just 2 or 3 words on business planning. Yeah, and I do that because business planning is the essential precursor to deciding what the right legal structure is for your business. If you don't know what your business is going to do or how it's going to do in the future, then you can't get the right structure. So the process of business planning is just creating that roadmap for yourself, covering all the various aspects of your business, from finance to marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And the aim of it at the end of the day is to end up with clear objectives and then working out then how you would subsequently move forward with them. When you're business planning, it's really a 3-step process. You need to know where you are today, and you'll be surprised how many schools don't know where they are today. And when I mean that, is how they are financially, what they're really spending their money on, who their real market is, who they're really servicing, all those sorts of things. So you've got to do some assessment about where you are today, and you want to know what you want to achieve. And that can be very variable, and we'll cover that a little bit in the business structures piece. Are you looking to move into a new market? Are you looking to retire? Those are 2 very different things that you'd want to achieve, and you might go in a different direction depending on which where you want to get to in the future. And then the business planning process is the middle bit about how you'll subsequently get there in between. And you have to always recognize that in any form of business planning process, there are constraints to what you can do. It could be finance, it could be your facilities, clients you have available, staff. The whole business planning process will take account of that. But I just mentioned that, and I can, if you want, at the back end of this, talk a bit more about business planning and the processes you need to do with that. Or subsequently, I can run another webinar and just cover that separately. But I would always implore you, don't go straight to your legal structure. Start on business planning. Work out what it is you want to do before you decide how you want to structure yourself. So business structures is a very simple thing. It's about how your riding establishment is viewed in the eyes of the law. That's simply what it is. And in it, there's a whole bunch of things that vary that. So the level of protection you want to be afforded, public liability or non-public liability. There are various tax treatments on different types of business structure. If you go down one way, you might find the assets are owned by you, and if you go down another way, you might find the assets are owned by the business. There are some implications of business rates, certainly some implications in insurance terms, and then finally, depending on what business structure you are, will often dictate whether or not you can get funding from external funding bodies. But at the end of the day, as I've said earlier, the structure you adopt must allow you to meet the goals of your business, and there are means, not an end in themselves. Okay, now there's been some work done by British Equestrian to look across the field about how businesses or equestrian businesses are set up, and it's interesting. So in the study of what was done, which was 265 riding centres, just under half, pretty much half of them were sole traders.
Finished.
About a quarter were public limited companies, and about 10% were community interest companies. About 40% had an income of less than £100,000, and don't worry about the affiliations. And And that's quite interesting. And I'll come back to sole trading as we go on, because in many ways it's the least advantageous position to be in, is to be a sole trader. Not wrong, but there's some real downsides to it. And then when you looked at it, about 20% of the riding schools were doing stuff that was nothing to do with on horse riding. It was either horse care or alternative education, equine assisted learning. And we've got people on the call today in that area, and therapies. So, there's a lot of things that were going on that were off horse. And that's actually quite important, because a lot of that can attract funding from alternative sources if you have the right business structure. Now, when you go down a business structure, there's really two routes you can go down. You can either go down what's called the incorporated route or the unincorporated route. The unincorporated route is essentially where the business is the same as the individual, the same identity. You've not registered in any formal way with any organization such as company house. You are the business. An incorporated business is one that has a separate legal personality to you. You've set the business up, it is identified in law as being separate to yourselves, and it will have owners, which are shareholders, and will have directors, which could be managers. So the individual is the business in an unincorporated organization. And when you go down those two routes, there are different implications to them. So, for example, if you're unincorporated, you're not a separate legal entity. More importantly, you're not protected from liability. So, in an unincorporated organization, you are fully liable for the losses of the business, including any insurance losses that occur if, for example, somebody falls off a horse and the insurance cover you have doesn't totally cover the liability that's eventually awarded. In an incorporated organization, you have got protected liability, providing you weren't doing something that was illegal. In an unincorporated organization, when you sign a contract, you're signing it as Fred Blogs. When you do it as an incorporated organization, you're doing it as XY Stables. And then you're not regulated by any legal body if you're unincorporated, but you are being regulated by one or maybe even two bodies if you're incorporated. And then if you're unincorporated, there are no legal governance requirements, but there are definite legal governance requirements for an incorporated organization. Wherever you are, you do need to be registered with HMRC, because there's tax to pay whichever way you go. So you do need to ensure you're always registered with HMRC. But there's also a second way you can look at business structures. You can either look at them as private benefit organizations, where the benefit is gained by the person or group directly involved in running the business, or social benefit organization, where it's delivered on behalf of the community through the activities of the organization. So there are two ways of looking at it. Is it private benefit or is it social benefit? And even in a social benefit organization, that doesn't stop individual income being generated, but overall the purpose of the business is for social benefit. So if I look at the various organizational charts, I've got private benefit and social benefit and incorporated and unincorporated on these four blocks. The sole trader is firmly in the private benefit and unincorporated zone. The sole trader is somebody who's self-employed, owns and runs their own business as an individual, and has no legal identity other than that of the owner. On the other hand, you could have a limited liability partnership, which is a sufficient process that allows partners to work together. They're like sole traders because underneath them, the partners are all self-employed, but each partner has limited personal liability for debts within the business. This is particularly useful structure when you're, for example, you've got a multi-generational organization. Maybe you're running a riding establishment on a farm and you've got grandparents, parents, and kids all involved in the same thing, and you want to make it tax efficient. particularly for things like death duties, a limited liability partnership can be a very effective way of doing that. Then you've got limited companies. These are legal structures that limit, again, the liability of the individuals within the company. They can be by guarantee or they can be shares. But by guarantee, for example, the ABRS running this webinar is a limited, we're actually a charity and a limited company, limited by guarantee. So all our members own us. They all have a share in the ABRS. Whereas if you'll buy shares, which is the most normal for a riding school, the shares are held by the owners of the business. They totally own the business. The two on the right there are managed by Companies House. Then in the social benefit zone, you've got things like company interest companies. So this is a company, again, either limited by guarantee or shares, that can demonstrate that it's operating for the benefit of the community. There are rules that control this. They include things like who owns the assets. There is a community benefit test, so you can't just set up a CIC. You have to clearly demonstrate that you are delivering community benefit. You do enjoy limited liability, and this is often used where there's a company that wants to be seen as a social enterprise rather than just a charity. Then there's charities limited by guarantee, which is actually what the ABRS is. It's a company limited by guarantee that demonstrates benefit for its demonstrates social benefit. We're a charity. We have limited liability, and that's where we are. And then lastly, there's a thing called a charitable incorporated organization. It's very similar to a charity, but it's wholly regulated by the Charities Commission. So if you look at CIC is looked after by Companies House, a charity limited by guarantee, which is what the ABRS is. We have to go to both Companies House and the Charity Commission. And because that process was always very complicated, this extra organization, the CIO, Charity Incorporated Organization, was set up a few years back, and that's purely managed by the Charity Commission. And then on the left side, you do get some social benefit organizations that are unincorporated, like an unincorporated organization, often sports clubs with this. And there are some others, private benefit organization. So you can have straight partnerships instead of limited liability partnerships. I'm not sure why you'd do it. And you can have community benefit societies and community amateur sports clubs. And again, I haven't really gone into those in any detail in this presentation, but I generally don't think they're applicable to riding establishments. There are some tax implications as well, whichever way you go. So a sole trader does have to do income tax. They are liable for VAT, although as a sole trader, which of course also influences the limited liability partnership, if you are delivering a riding lesson, you are entitled to the educational exemption. So if you're a sole trader or a member of a limited liability partnership, it's you doing it, not one of your staff. You don't need to charge VAT on any lessons that you're giving. Otherwise, everybody else is liable for VAT. You can also get this this VAT flat rate scheme exemption if you've got a VATable income that's greater than £90,000 and under £150,000, you can go for a flat rate VAT exemption scheme. And then there's capital gains tax. The only people exempt capital gains tax are limited companies and PICs, but limited companies both of those end up paying corporation tax. So it kind of evens out. And of course, charities are exempt capital gains as well. And then business rates, you can get business rate reliefs depending along where you are along that scale. Charities, there is a mandatory 80% business rate relief, and then most local authorities will give a further discretionary 20% to give full rate relief. So all I'm saying there is there are some implications to the way you go There are also some death duty implications as well. And whenever you go down this route, you need to speak to a lawyer, make sure you've got the right scheme for you. Okay, so what? Why would I adopt one legal structure over another? As I said, a business structure is only a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. So you should ask yourself a bunch of questions. Why is my riding school structured the way it is? When I speak to most people, I generally find the structure is the way it is because that's where it's always been. So you need to think carefully about, why are you where you are today? If I stay in this structure, will I be financially viable now and into the future? That is part of business planning. And it is a result of that business planning that you select the right structure that will help you be financially viable and sustainable in the future. Often many people don't know what the business is worth or actually what the business actually is. What is the boundary of the business and what it's worth? If you're ever thinking of retiring and wanting to sell the business, that's really important that you understand that. Are there clients and activities that you want to get involved in that you don't today? That might drive you toward the social enterprise type model if there are, for example, certain client groups you want to get to that you're not currently accessing. Will the structure allow me to move on when I want to? So if you're looking to retire from the business at some point in the future, you need to think about what you're going to do with the business. So if, for example, you're a sole trader and you die, the business will go to your next of kin or whoever you've left it to in your will. But they don't have to do anything with it. They don't have to. They can just close the business down and sell it. They can close it house they want, build houses, whatever they want. You have no control over them. Whereas in some of the other business structures, you'll find that passing the business on either to other people in your family or passing it on into other ownership is much easier. So do I want somebody to take over, and what are the risks to doing this? And then does the structure limit my personal liability? This is a very important one for us in the riding industry. If you're a sole trader, your only protection if you're going to be sued for damages is the insurance you took out. So there's two things to that. One is make sure you have personal public liability and professional liability that covers you adequately. I come across a lot of schools that have liability at, say, 2 million. Nowadays, that's inadequate. You shouldn't have any insurance that's under 5 million. That's my recommendation. So if you're a sole trader, you do stand to have all your personal possessions at risk if you're not properly insured or you don't adopt a structure that protects you. So how do I choose the right company structure? So as I said, on the left-hand side, you've got a private benefit, profit-focused area. On the right-hand side, you've got community-focused and social benefited. On the liability, you're either going to be limited liability or unlimited liability. And on the right-hand side, you may have an ownership preference between retaining control or having no owners and shareholders. So if you're going down the limited liability, the private benefit, limited liability unlimited route, and generally that's quite a low admit because you're just probably going to be a sole trader, but it will be very difficult to access alternative funding. That will put you in the sole trader area. If you're going to limit your liability, you're going to be an LLP or a limited company. You will have to submit annual accounts. It can still be very difficult to access alternative funding from funding bodies. Setting up a company and doing the accounts, though, is not a difficult business. A lot of people are put off becoming a limited company or an LLP because they think the whole process is really difficult. It really isn't difficult, and an accountant will help you with that, very easily. Generally, that left-hand side is very good when you're doing commercial activity. So commercial lessons, home learners, that type of thing, where you're purely selling a service. On the right-hand side, You're into either the community interest company or the charity CIO. As a CIC, you can access most alternative funding, not all. There are some funding bodies that won't give the CICs, but a lot will. You do end up with this thing called an asset lock. So anything that's owned by the CIC is owned by the CIC. You can't just take it out and sell it as an individual. And then there is a restriction on the amount of dividends you can pay yourself, but you can still make a good living from it because you can be the CEO of the CIC and you can take up 30% dividends from the business. On the right-hand side, generally the charity of CIO can access pretty much any alternative funding, but you can't make a business and you don't own the business. There are no owners, shareholders. It's owned by the charity as the charity. So that's the kind of 4 legs you can go down when trying to select which sort of structure you would need for the things you're trying to do. Now, it isn't quite as straightforward as that. Now, let me explain. I'll come back to that in a moment. So if you look at the right option, about 80% of private companies generate their income from commercial activity. And when you look at the charity sector, about 70% of their income is generated by charitable activity. It's not surprising because that's how they were set up, but it really is really as clear as that. Okay, now I said it wasn't as straightforward as this because if you're running a riding establishment, you could have multiple businesses within the same business riding school activity. Now, I know of one riding school that's got 5 businesses running, varying from a cafe to a shop to a charity so you don't need to be one or other. It depends on the size of your organization. You can have multiple business structures. So you can, for example, have a private benefit organization who's a sole trader and a limited company. They will hold the council license. You could have on the side of it a social benefit organization or a CIC or a charity or a CIO doing something that is of social benefit. That organization purchases services from the riding school. So, for example, it could be renting the arena, hiring the horses, hiring the instructors. And on the side, you could have you as an individual, and you rent the facilities and loan the horses to the limited company. So you can have these various identities within the same business, and you can have multiples of these. So the individual retains the assets. The private benefit organization retains most of the profits, and then the social benefit organization accesses other clients and accesses other cash. As a sideline, each of those organizations will have individual VAT thresholds. And whilst I can never argue a structure that's about avoiding tax, this is the reality of having multiple organizations. Each of those ends up with their own VAT threshold. So, sorry, let me go into just one last thing before we finish off. The question is a charity or a CIC. So if you're going down the social benefit route, why would you go one or other route? Is the organization established solely for a charitable purpose? If not, regardless of everything else, it can't be a charity. And what I can say is that the Charity Commission have tightened up hugely on this part of it. You need to really convince the Charity Commission you are a charity. Is the organization established to benefit a sufficient section of the public? If the answer is no, then regardless of anything else, you can't be a charity. So, for example, an organization set up to provide educational services that encourages young people to pursue an equestrian career is unlikely to pass the test. But an organization that's doing the same for example, underprivileged children might then be able to get a charitable status. Do you want to make a living from the organization? If you do, then the organization is not really going to be a charity for you. If you want to make a living, you would probably be a CIC because you can be employed as a director or an owner of the CIC. As a charity, you could become the CIO, CEO of the charity, but in the end of the day, the board could move you on if they weren't happy with your performance. Do the founders want to retain control? Again, a charity is owned by the charity. If you want to control the business, then you need to be a CIC or CIC, not a charity. And then how will the organization generate income? If it's going to get most of its income from grants and donations, there is a significant advantage of being a charity because you can claim things like gift aid. If the income is mostly earned, for example, local authority contracts for educational services, then you might be better off being a CIC. And then there are some tax considerations, particularly gift aid. Whichever way you go, you'll need trustees, and picking them is the key because they can help with business planning. So if you're going to go down either a charity or CIC route, you will need some trustees. Make sure you get a good selection of trustees. Maybe somebody who's good at marketing, maybe somebody who's good at finance, and a lot of awarding bodies, particularly for CICs, won't allow you to get a grant off them if all the trustees, or often more than two trustees, are from the same family. So picking your trustees is very important. What do you need for a company or a CIC? You'll need a set of documents, a memorandum of association, articles of association, bylaws, a community interest statement if you're a CIC. These are all relatively easy to draft. And again, accountants will help you do that. You also need a governing document for a charity, which sets out the purpose of the charity, who are the trustees, when will meetings be held, all that sort of stuff. That's what we've got as the ABRS. And that's, again, a more complex document to draft. You'll normally need a bit of help to do that. And there are companies out there that will help you draft up a governing document and help you become a charity. And that's because the Charity Commission are very much more strict about who becomes a charity. So let me just give you a quick summary. There probably should be a 0.0 here, but the 0.0 would be, remember, you need to do business planning before you think about your structure. You need to make sure that you reflect the activity on objectives of your riding establishment into the structure you're going to take. You want to think about how you want to protect those involved in running the business. You want to think about whether you can save money, either in tax or inheritance benefits. You want to end up good governance. You might want to think about who's going to succeed you in the business. And you want to have a solid, well thought through and structured business plan. And I would always recommend using professional legal accountancy support to work it out. The ABRS has got a legal advisor who specializes in this area. So if that's something of interest, I can point you in her direction. I'll put these slides online. There are various guides and reference documents I've shown there, and you'll get access to those when I put this online. So forget that. Okay, any questions on any of that? It's been a very quick canter through structures. Any questions on that? Let me stop sharing. Let me just check the chat line. If anybody questions on any of that. So is anybody thinking about changing their legal structure as they are now? Is that an interest on anybody? Okay. All right. Well, look, I will put that up online. It's a very complicated area. You're always welcome to give me a call if you online don't want to talk about the specifics of your business, but would like to just get a little bit more information. I would always point you in the direction of a lawyer or an accountant. And lastly, if you want to talk a bit more, want to know a bit more about business planning, I can help out there. But it is important that you business plan before you think about your legal structure. Yeah, partnership as to sole trader. Now, it depends whether you're going for a partnership, your partnership, um, a limited liability. In a straight partnership, there isn't much difference if it's just a straight partnership. It's just essentially in a straight partnership, you're both essentially sole traders and you're just cooperating. There's no legal structure. You both are um, entities in yourself. If you go to go as a limited liability partnership, there is a difference, and the primary difference is you have protection from liability. Molly-Ann, you can't unmute. Yeah, just type in. Okay, hang on. It's typing away. Let me stop sharing whilst we're on.